This is the Patrick Alexander Podcast. Welcome to your upgrade.
First of all, it's great to have you here.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Amazing. So basically, these conversations on this podcast are about what happens when people stop outsourcing their health and they take their body, their life, and the responsibility again for how they live. Now, today, I'm joined by Christopher Brandlin. Chris is a politician by profession. He comes from a bodybuilding background, and some people might even know him as the carnivore lawyer. Now, what interests me isn't so much politics during this chat, but more the man behind the politician. So welcome to the show, Christopher. Chris.
Yes. Well, thanks for having me on. So, and yes, I will agree that some of the best comments are probably taken from my health side rather than the political side. And technically, I'm a political candidate. So I'm not, even though I think Google addresses me as a politician, even though I haven't had any political office yet, but for some reason that's how they define me.
Okay. Well, just to get to know a little bit more about you and
Sure.
to take the viewer of the podcast back to the beginning. When you look back, what was the moment where you realized that the way you were living and the system you basically trusted was no longer working for you?
Yeah, if you mentioned, if you probably recall from our previous live chat, maybe a couple other videos, I came from the health and fitness industry as a former personal trainer, and I got into all natural bodybuilding during law school. i- in college, I was a fraternity president. I partied, but I was also a trainer. So I had too much fun in college. So when I got into law school, I wanted to take it to a new level. So I worked with a registered dietitian who basically put me on ketogenic diets, and he got me in very good shape and very lean because I was never used to kind of substantially reducing my carbohydrate. And he would be doing that throughout the week. He would have me like go 2 to 3 days of like very low carbs, and then 1 day of carb refeeding. It's called carb cycling. They do it a lot in the bodybuilding world, and the all natural bodybuilding world specifically. And he got me from a 200-pound powerlifter down to like 155 pounds at my competition weight. So I did the all natural. I did like the smaller kind of like division where I'm only 5'9", 155 pounds, but I got very, very lean at that level, and I did very well. So after I did my last contest in 2010, I was practicing law for about 5 or 6 years. And all of a sudden, I think that's when I was traveling a lot for work, and I came back and I was not feeling well. I was just very sick. I was waking up. I call it the autoimmune umbrella. Like you get one of every problem, right? It's like you're waking up with fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue syndrome. Your joints, your muscles are in pain. You got chronic headaches. And then your food, you're not digesting it because I was, feeling like, man, I'm not breaking down my food. I felt bloated. And I was doing more of, I was still doing pretty keto, but I was doing a lot of plants and vegetables. And at that time, I went to a conventional doctor who put me on a lot of pharmaceuticals. Because I told him he didn't really do any testing. He's like, you probably just have some major gut infections. I was like, yeah, but it's got everything. It's not just my gut. It's my knees, my ankles, like everything's in pain. What's going on? And he didn't do any testing. He said, no, you probably just have a gut infection. So I'm going to put you on some antibiotics and some laxatives and some corticosteroids to reduce the inflammation. And that was like a really bad cocktail that him and a lot of others, it wasn't just him, they had me cycle them like over the course of like, it was supposed to be, let's just see how they do for the first couple of weeks to a month. And then all of a sudden he had me cycling them like every couple of weeks on and on for a period of like 14 months. And what started off as gut discomfort, just having bloating, turned into gut pain, where it was just starting to get like really bad, where I was bleeding from my intestines. It was really bad. And towards the end, so at around around about a year later, they said, okay, your intestines gonna really inflame. I'm like, yeah, I mean, originally it was just some bloating, but now like I'm in a lot of pain. I'm bleeding from my intestines, and I'm not I'm not even drinking alcohol like, I had a couple of drinks of alcohol. I'm like, I'm not even doing that. Like, something's really wrong with me. So they found out that a piece of my intestine got really inflamed, most likely from pharmaceuticals. Now I'm finding out, but they referred me to a colorectal surgeon who recommended to remove a piece of my intestine that was very inflamed. And he promised me, he's like, you know what? Pretty sure if you remove just this piece of your intestine, you're going to feel so much better. And it was the biggest regret of my life because right during the surgery, I woke up prematurely during the surgery. Like they didn't even use proper anesthesia or something. But so I actually woke up. They always do the surgeries typically in the early mornings. And while they were finishing me up, sewing up my intestines, I actually woke up during like the surgery and just looked down and saw them stitching me up. And I was in so much, your intestines just got cut open. They're getting stitched. Usually they give you enough drugs. As I looked into it, they give you enough drugs to usually sedate you throughout the whole day. I woke up while they're cutting up, like sewing up my intestines. So I screamed in a lot of pain, and then they drugged me up to put me back to bed for like 1 or 2 days. And I was just drugged up in the hospital. And they released me prematurely without making sure it was working properly. I was having just painful bowel movements for the next couple of weeks. And then 3 weeks later, I developed a humongous, like grapefruit size infection right at the main anastomosis site where they cut me open. So um, if you know laparoscopic surgeries, Patrick, it's mainly minimally invasive. It's small incisions, but they always have one larger incision. That's called the anastomosis site. And that part got very, very infected and inflamed. It was 2 inches below my belly button where it grew up the size of a grapefruit. So when they had to cut me back open, he called me, he basically, hey, go to the ER. We don't have time to wait. And they rushed me to the ER and I had to get it cut like open while I was fully awake. And all they did is they injected some lidocaine, but I felt the whole effing thing. And I was remember my analogy is I was biting my tongue to make sure that I would not be bleeding or like to not be outward moving because, oh my God, they're cutting more. I was like, I can't move. I want to make sure I don't shake or do anything because if they screw me up, I'm going to have something worse. So I just I was biting my tongue and bleeding from my mouth so bad because I was trying not to move. And then 3 weeks later, it happened again. They had to cut me back open. I
No
was like,
way.
this is the biggest regret of my life. Not only did I take a bunch of pharmaceuticals that like wrecked my gut, but I did the most regretful surgery, like that's gonna basically permanently like ruin my life. So I was trying to manage it from getting really infected and inflamed, but it was still really bad. And towards the end of 2017, that's when all these surgeries happened. I was like, you know what? I need to save the rest of my intestines. So I already knew I didn't trust them. And this is where I really didn't trust them. They said, since you're still having complications, we might as well remove all your intestines. And that is where I woke up. I'm like, my God, conventional medicine is making people worse. I was like, they just ruined my life. I said, no, I basically gave them the middle finger. I said, I'm going to look into this. I'm going to look into functional. I'm going to do some blood tests. I'm going to see what's going on with it. And when I was doing the blood test, I remember I had Lyme and co-infections, but I still don't think that was the main problem. The main problem was just all these pharmaceuticals they gave me, because that's what made me so much worse. So I ended up doing a 10-day water fast. Um, so I did a small fast, like 1 or 2 days, sometimes up to 3 days, but I never did an extended one. And usually when I did a small fast, I'd go to a fasting clinic to fast for like 2 or 3 days. And it was typically run by vegans. I'm not sure if, Patrick, where you are, but in the United States, most of these fasting clinics are run by vegans. And although I think fasting is amazing now that I just did it like over the weekend before I got a little lack of sleep before this podcast. But fasting is healing. I think the most important thing is how you refeed. And if you refeed on just plants and like insoluble fiber that just wrecks your gut, that's like the worst thing you could possibly do. So this time, I on my own, I did a 10-day water fast, but on the refeed, I was looking into what to feed. And I looked into the GAPS diet. So the GAPS diet is the gut and psychology syndrome diet. It's from like the 70s or 80s. And it was mainly focused on bone broth as healing. And they said, do an introduction diet. You're going to start with just meats, and then you're going to add the easiest vegetables, like they said, like boiled carrots, um, to start off. And then you start introducing other, you know, plants later, but you got to start with just meat. That was the whole focus. So I was like, let me just do a slow roasted steak to see how I do. And that's what I did. I did a slow roasted steak, and I felt amazing on the refeed. And I was like, this kind of just like woke me up. I'm like, man, meat is really healing. Like I've always done like meat and vegetables, but I never just did meat.
Where
So,
was your gut at the time? What level was it at? Because you had these
well, the
surgeries.
fast really
They
helped.
told you
Yeah,
everything had to
I
be
just I
removed. But where were
so
you at?
So this was going into 2007 in going into 2018, because April of 2017 was when I had the surgeries. I had complications the rest of the year. So they did like they recut me open in May, and then they recut me again in the end of May. And I was having complications from like end of May all the way until like December. And I think it was going into January. That's why I did the 10-day water fast. And then when I felt so much better after refeeding on just meat, so the incisions were kind of healing during the fasting, because they were always like, it was very inflamed, and I had to like make sure I would get like a tremendous infection, because they talked about cutting me open because they saw the infection coming back. But the fast helped it, but the refeeding is what really kind of healed it. And then I started like adding in some other plants right afterwards. I started having some problems again. I'm like, whoa, okay, I can't do the plants. So I spoke with one of my friends. He's still my best friend to this day. I'm like, man, I was like, Brian, because most of my friends in the health and fitness industry, I was like, this is weird. Like, I can only eat meat. If the moment I try like any plants, I have problems. He's like, there's actually a diet like people are following that. It's called like the carnivore diet. It's kind of crazy. Like, and people just eat just meat, but I think a lot of them seem to be doing well. I'm like, holy shit, let me look into this. So that's when I found Michaela Peterson, Dr. Baker, and a few others. So I did like a phone call with Michaela Peterson. I think it was like May of 2018. And then I did a Skype with Dr. Baker like the end of the summer of 2018. And both of them, I was just trying to pick their brains, like say, like, what's good, like, what's my amount of fat and meat? What types of meat? What cuts of meat? Is it only beef? Can I add chicken? Fish? Those typical carnivore questions that you get when you're like just a new carnivore. But you know what? At the same time, right when I was speaking with Dr. Baker, I looked into it. I saw the Paleo Medicina clinic based out of Budapest, Hungary, and they're one of the few clinics that like actually have clinical trials showing how their patients did before and after an all meat based diet. And we're talking about like really serious conditions like stage 4 like colon cancer. So when I found them, I was like, man, they're a little more in tune. This is like a lot more in depth. I actually Skype with them, and then I agreed to stay with them for about 10 days. And that's why I went full carnivore, like not eating plants or supplements. And that was, I felt, probably the best, because they got me. I was still taking some like supplements, like you're taking your multivitamins and like, vitamin C, because you think your immune system's going to go out, right? The typical things that we have in our head. And they didn't allow any supplements. They said, no, meat, fat, salt, and water, and nothing else. I'm like, well, I'm still taking some herbs, because I got to make sure my motility, because I have scar tissue, because it was kind of like the intestines, even though it healed, is still kind of very restrictive. And that scar tissue is still deep to this day, too. So it's always a reminder that never make the same mistake. So, everybody, they looked at the abdominals like, oh, you're really lean. I'm like, inside, it's still restrictive. Like, because it's scar tissue, and not just that, I'm not sure if you know, Patrick, scar tissue, your body keeps creating scar tissue as a mechanism when it thinks it's like when it's damaged, as a healing mechanism. But when you have so much like disruptive nerves that where they cut me open, that your body still creates scar tissue. So this is why I have to do a lot of mobilization, stretching more than usual. But anyways, she's like, no herbs or anything, no prokinetics, no ginger, none of that stuff. Because I was trying to take like some like easier kind of like plant herbs to like for motility. She said, none of that. You're gonna eat plenty of fat, Chris. Plenty of fat. So you're not gonna have to worry about motility. And she was completely right, because I remember when I was eating really high fat, it would just go right through me. But then I learned, I was like, okay, I can't do that much fat. And because I'm not sure if you know, the Paleo Medicina Clinic, they do what's called the PKD diet, the ketogenic diet. So it's actually 80% fat. Most keto is like 70. I'm like, so, 70% fat, 30% protein, but paleo, or like a Paleo Medicina or PKD diet, is 80% fat. They are really focused on like a lot of like suet, tallow, brains, what else? Short ribs versus like ribeyes, because short ribs are fattier. If you have them with the bone in, because for some reason when they move the bones, it's actually very lean. And what else? And bone marrow, a lot of bone marrow. So they actually really focus on the fat more than the protein for the healing. And that's where I think a lot of people are missing. They're like, if you see some of these carnivores doing a really low fat diet, they usually have hormonal issues and they're having a lot of other issues, but the fat is a really healing element, I learned. And I learned that if you get a raw fat from a good source, it's the best. So my favorite is actually raw bone marrow, if you get it from a good source. So anyways, so when I came back to the United States, I started promoting like, hey, I was also a dietetic technician at that time. I was like, meat just saved my life. Like I thought we're supposed to be, I was doing lean meats before this, like, chicken and fish. Then all of a sudden, I was told not to do too much red meat, but red meat, really nutrient dense red meat, like almost it saved my life. We cannot demonize red meat. And I've met a lot of other people, because there's other people that stayed at the clinic from like Ireland and Spain and well, so I think there's another one from like Germany, and like all of them were feeling so much better just eating just a lot of really fatty red meat. I was like, there's something to this. We got to promote this. I mean, why is everybody demonizing red meat? Red meat should be praised. I'm like, I'm a living like testimony, and I've met so many other people too. But a lot of people were shaming me, and I remember I was going to get my dietetics, my master's in dietetics, and they told me I wasn't a good candidate because I talked about flipping the food pyramid upside down, like in my original session. And so I ended up kind of just promoting more farmers. And this is where I like, save for the farmers. I was actually buying from bulk farmers, because and then I knew that buying it straight from the farmers is the best source. What really got me into politics is the vaccine mandates. And this is where because I look at, I obviously am biased when it comes to pharmaceuticals, because I personally got wrecked from pharmaceuticals. And I wanted people to recognize that. And when they started forcing vaccines on individuals, like government employees and healthcare workers, that's where I spoke out. I'm like, hey, if people want to have their own drugs and they want to try it, that's up to them. Okay. If you want to be a voluntary sheep, that's fine. But you can never force it on the American citizens. And I spoke really loudly against that. And when they tried to report me to the state bar, it motivated me to get my PhD in public policy with crosses over with public health and run for Congress. And that's where I am today.
I see. So basically, you healed yourself largely outside conventional medicine, right?
Yeah, and actually it was the smartest, even though the surgery and all these pharmaceuticals were like the worst regret of my life, the smartest things that ever did was turn my back to conventional doctors. I gotta say conventional doctors for a reason too, Patrick, because everyone's like, oh, you hate all doctors. But no, I don't hate all doctors. I don't think doctors are really evil. I think they think they're really trying to help people, but they're not uneducated, they're miseducated. They're taught the wrong things. They're taught primarily pharmacology and surgeries during their medical curriculum. And this is why I learned, because I actually looked at the medical curriculum for all these major medical schools in the United States, and it's all based on pharmacology. And I was like, why is that so? And then you learn, I'm like, okay, who's funding the pharmaceutical, the medical schools? It's the pharmaceutical industries. And then you're like, why is Congress kind of making these decisions? Well, who's funding most of Congress? The pharmaceutical industries. I'm like you just realize how much power and money they have. And yes, with money comes a lot of power. And when they're funding over 2/3, I think it's almost over 70% of all of Congress, like federal and state level, both parties, not remember, you probably see me bashing a bunch of like, Democrats as a Republican, but some of my own party is getting that too. And a lot of people should be a lot more cautious. And this is where I can actually have, even if they're not like carnivore, like I can have like some kind of like, an agreement with the other party. I'm like, we both agree that pharmaceutical companies should not have this much power over the federal government and our future doctors, because our future doctors, then I learned that they spend less than 12 hours total of nutrition in all their medical school careers. I was like, the average personal trainer knows more about this. So why does a medical doctor completely illiterate when it comes to nutrition? And I was trying to like bring this up, and I have been bringing it up in my campaign. And the good thing is that more and more people are waking up. They're smelling the bullshit, as I like to put it. So yeah, this is where I'm really focused on. Right, I want to know that I want to teach people that you can heal with food. Like the whole kind of when you think about like how Hippocrates wanted, like let food be thy medicine,
Yeah.
basically. God never intended us to put a bunch of crap in our body, chemicals and otherwise, that we're not meant to have. And people think for some reason they're so manipulated. They're like, you have to be taking your medicine. Like, so how long have we been taking medicine? Yeah, the last couple of 100 years, maybe. And that's where kind of it went wrong. With Rockefeller and a lot of other things too.
So for you on a personal level then, Chris, what was the hardest part of stepping away from mainstream and choosing your own path when it came to your own healing?
The hardest thing is when everybody shunned me. So this is why, like, even my own family. I mean, this is why I don't think they did that out of like, wanting to harm me or anything negative. They just didn't know any better. So this is where I came to realization years later. Even when I avoided them, like, you know what, you guys were just probably trying to help. You had good intentions, so it wasn't wise intentions. That was probably the biggest thing is, and I'm not sure if you heard me, but for 2 years in a row, I was banned from family holiday dinners because I wasn't vaccinated. And this is where it's like they're getting so brainwashed. And I spoke with a lot of other people, they had the same thing too. They had a vaccinated only Thanksgiving and Christmas dinner. Those are the two major holidays that they have here in the United States and a lot of other countries too. But yeah, for 2 years in a row, they had vaccinated only Thanksgiving and a Christmas dinner. So I'm like, that's like, especially if you from someone that's been personally wrecked from pharmaceuticals. And this is why everyone's like, why like this one attorney so anti-pharmaceutical? Well, if you know my story, yeah, you'll know
Yeah.
why. And not just
Yeah.
that, it wasn't just happening to me. I met so many other people on the journey that had the same, it was not the same exact thing. Maybe they didn't get in their testing, but they got wrecked from pharmaceuticals in different ways.
Yeah. So when you change the way you eat, because you turned carnivore, I assume that once you saw through your experience in this clinic that carnivore was working for you and that was the solution to heal your gut. What what didn't you even realize you were missing at the time?
Uh, first of all, I think like substantially increasing my animal fat was probably like the craziest thing I ever thought. Because even when we're bodybuilding, we didn't do really low fat because we're doing mostly fats from like avocado is like a very common one in the bodybuilding world. I mean, there's a lot of plant-based fats. They'll do like almond butter, but I realized that or do like a lot of salmon was like the fattiest thing that you would include. Like, oh, it's got good fat, so a lot of salmon, but it was never using a fatty ribeye to heal. I think that was the craziest thing that come to recognition that the fattiest steaks are the best. And that was really, and especially from a personal training level, most of the nutrition that you're taught in these personal training courses are like kind of like speaking exactly what these hospitals are doing. Like saturated fat is bad. They say like stick with quality fats, plant-based fats and all that. Even though I did well during bodybuilding, I was like when I was bodybuilding my best, my peak was I was 25 years old. At 25 years old, I'll be honest, you can eat whatever the crap you want. If you're a male. Females, in my experience as a personal trainer, after their age, like 21, 22, they really can't eat much. But for men, you can still kind of eat a bunch of crap until your late 20s, and then your 30s, you really just can't get away with anything.
Yeah. So in this time that this was all happening to you in 2017 kind of onwards, and between, let's say, 2017
Yeah,
and
no,
COVID,
it was
were you
April.
still
It was April 18th, 2017 when I had the surgery. So,
right?
and they released me April 20th, a couple days later, prematurely. And then I was brought back in for the emergency resection early May, and then again, end of May of 2017. And I battled with complications and just pain and bleeding for like the rest of 2017. It wasn't like, I think it was the end of 2017 going into 2018 is when I did that extended fast.
And were you still doing bodybuilding at the time?
Oh no, I stopped. My last contest was my last year of law school, where I did Mr. Los Angeles Natural. I think, yeah, and because I did bodybuilding mostly, it was 2019. Oh, sorry, 2009 and 2010. But now that I just turned 40, and I'm in relatively lean shape. A lot of people said, "Hey, you could probably do another one if you think about it." I was like, you know what? I never thought about it. I mean, I'm doing another bull riding contest. I already did one. I'm going to do another one. Even though I've only lasted 4 seconds, I still outlasted all these younger kids at age 40. Because most of the people that do the bull riding, like, are they usually compete at a college level. Most of the professional bull riders compete during college because a lot of there's colleges in the Midwest in the United States that compete in bull riding. So a lot of them do contests on their own as well. So though they're all age 21, 22 typically. I was like the only one at age 40 that jumped on a bull. But it just shows you age is only a number if you really think
Yeah.
about it. You could do whatever you want. So yeah, I may do another contest towards the end of next year. I'm gonna try to take some sleep off it. Roughest part of me is I'm running a political campaign and I'm running a law firm in 2 different states, and I'm getting my pilot license at the same time, so I'm studying aviation, so I've been burning the candle a little bit more. That's probably the one unhealthy thing about me is I definitely need more sleep, um, but and I'm definitely probably not getting that relaxation component that everybody does need to balance their sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system. So I'm the flight or flight and kind of just draining myself. I need to have that rest and recovery, but that's probably the one thing I'm missing.
Right. And how does that show itself in your life that you're missing these parts in your health?
It just takes me a lot longer to recover. I know that, and this is where I actually recommend. I'm not sure if you're familiar. It's called hyperbaric oxygen therapy. So this is where I learned oxygen and meat are like the two kind of best components of healing that a lot of us are oxygen deprived. So I started doing some hyperbaric oxygen therapy. I realized that when I had an injury, I would heal 10 times faster. It's because the body, when you use hyperbaric oxygen therapy, it's really used to kind of enhance the healing process. And this is why with people they have torn ligaments or if they had a surgery, orthopedic, they do hyperbaric oxygen therapy and they actually heal a lot faster. They regenerate faster. And they even showed clinical trials with people with like ulcerative colitis, like putting like almost in remission with just a hyperbaric oxygen therapy routinely. So that's why I kind of, even though I hate pharmaceuticals, I know that some regenerative medicine, like stem cells, I'm a true believer in stem cells and exosomes. I've personally used them for like I've actually I've had multiple hip injuries from a lot of freak accidents, and I just during bull riding training, I fractured my tailbone, and that's a pain in the ass, literally.
Literally.
And I exactly, and this is right before I started my, well, I already fractured it, like, couple times over the years, just bad stunts, and I'm still an adrenaline junkie, I do a lot of stupid stunts, and I've always had, like, bad injuries, but I remember during the bull riding training, like, um, I think it was in August, I did my first bull riding contest in end of September. I remember I was doing the training and I basically landed back on the end of the bull, like right on the bone, and you're not using a saddle. You just jump on it just bare, just jeans and everything. So I remember when I landed on a rough part of the bull and I leaned back, and that's what you're not supposed to do. I leaned back as I was falling out of the bull. It basically just cracked my tailbone, and it was in so much pain. I was sitting on a donut while I was traveling because I still have to travel a lot and I have to drive back and forth because I have offices in 2 different states. I was in so much pain, but I got stem cells injected right into my tailbone, and a couple days later, I felt amazing. So that's why I think regenerative medicine can be used in conjunction. I don't like people using all this like Ozempic crap. They try to say that that's regenerative medicine. I'm like, that's not regenerative. That's straight like some crazy fat loss kind of like, trick that comes with a lot of side effects. And you're seeing people with like gastroparesis, all this other stuff too. So
Can you take me back through a day of your diet for those who are on carnivore diet or are thinking about carnivore diet? I'm always interested in
yeah.
seeing what other people eat. I know what I eat. I know what my girlfriend eats, but I love to hear what other carnivore or
Yeah.
near carnivore eats.
So since I actually had Lyme, and I should say I have Lyme because a lot of people that have Lyme disease, you have to keep it in remission. It can always come back if you're ever in a bad environment, like, or if you get exposed to mold. So I'm also the mold attorney. So I kind of like studied mold, like, um, infestations at major properties. If for a lot of those people that had Lyme, they have to be sensitive about what type of meats they have because if they have any aged meats or high histamine meats, they have bad reactions. And aged meats, if you age a meat, like sometimes it makes it more tender, it makes it tastier, which is good for like the average person. They want to have a tastier, tender piece of meat, but for the average limey, it could cause a lot of problems. So I have to get the freshest meats. It's kind of weird that I'm allergic to lamb and goat, but nothing else. And dairy. So I can't even do I don't even do like butter. I have butter occasionally. It doesn't cause me too much, but if I have any other dairy like cheese, I have a really bad reaction. So I can only do beef. Thank God I don't have alpha gal, and I'm hearing more people have this alpha gal. It's that meat allergy. If I ever do chicken or pork, I have to get it from a specific farm or a group of farms. I have to find what's called corn-free and soy-free pork. So I did a couple of videos on this, is that chickens and pigs are just like humans. They have monogastric stomach systems. They have a single chamber stomach system. So they can't break down a lot of grains like cows can. Cows have like a 4-chamber stomach. That's why they can break down. That's why if you compare a grass-fed cow to a grain-fed cow, it's not substantially worse than the omega-6s, but the chickens can be very inflammatory. So if I ever have a bad like source of chicken, or a pig or a pork, I feel like crap. So if I ever do eat it, I usually find, like, I just did some bulk orders from a new farm in Texas, and it's all corn-free, soy-free pork and chicken. So sometimes I'll have that for lunch, or I'll just do one meal a day and save for dinner. My best is when I get a fresh, fatty cut of steak, I grind it myself and eat it raw. And that is the best feeling. And not only
What do
that,
you mean? What do you mean by that? It's the best feeling.
if you overcook a steak, a lot of rendered fat goes right through you. Even though it may not hurt your gut, it can feel a little comfortable when you have a lot of rendered fat go right through you because you're gonna have a bad bathroom experience. For a lot of people that eat a lot of rendered fat, I mean, here, look at a whole jar of tallow is rendered fat. Eat a jar of tallow and tell me how you feel tomorrow. So
I'll
yeah,
let you know.
you're gonna sit on the toilet for a little longer than usual. So that's what I meant by uncomfortable. But raw fat, it doesn't have me the same experience, and I still actually have more energy doing raw fat. So what I do is I get a fatty cut of steak. Like they say, don't waste a ribeye on just grinding it. So what I actually do, I use short ribs and tri-tip, and sometimes chuck steak. And especially when I use chuck steak, because if you try to cook chuck steak, you usually have to use like a chuck roast. You have to like slow cook it throughout the day. And if you're having problems with histamines, you can't do any slow cooking. So you
Yeah.
can't do a crock pot of a chuck roast all day, because when you eat it, it may taste good, but you're gonna feel like, oh God, I feel tired. I feel like a little groggy. You don't feel very inflamed. You just kind of feel a little like crap. That's what a histamine issue kind of does. It's kind of like a odd food coma that you have. But so chuck steak, since it's so gristly and so tough with the connective tissue compared to a lot of other steaks, just like brisket. Brisket is another cut of steak. Those are best if you basically cut it up in small pieces and feed it through a meat grinder and eat it raw. Because you just grinding it up. So for me, grinding up my own fatty steaks are the best. Yeah,
Sounds amazing.
I don't, and the only eggs I can have, it's typically duck eggs, quail eggs. I can't have most chicken eggs unless it's corn-free, soy-free, but it still causes problems. So I am a lion diet. I do mainly just beef, salt, and water when you think about it. I do some chicken and pork occasionally, and then sometimes fish, but then the fish is another histamine issue. A lot of fish for a lot of people, like, like a can of sardines, a lot of carnivores like doing that. That causes histamine issues. It makes me feel kind of like groggy. So not like really sick and tired of gut pain, but you feel really tired.
And you've completely cut out all vegetables out of your diet, fruits,
Oh yeah, no,
vegetables.
I
Yeah.
can't tolerate any vegetables. And not just that, I still have like intrinsic scar tissue, even though I look very lean, very deep inside, it's still restrictive. So I remember that when I started doing more plants after the gut surgeries, I had blockages in my intestines because the fiber would cause a blockage. So if you have your intestinal lining and you have strictures from scar tissue, it gets pinched. So if you put a bunch of fiber down there, cause a blockage. But especially this is why I like grinding my own meats. First of all, you break down, you digest most of the meats. Okay. That's why like the best thing about meat fat, it's almost completely digestible. Fiber is non-digestible. That's why I explain to people, it's going to pass through you and you're not going to break it down. Why would you eat something that you do not digest? You're not absorbing any benefits of it. It just and this is why I tell so much people, and this is why one correct thing I did learn as a dietetic technician, it's kind of like a registered dietitian, is that when people, if they had really bad surgeries and they have strictures in the intestines, you're supposed to do what's called a low residue diet, and it's typically a low fiber diet. So if anybody had like a prior stomach surgery, they're never supposed to do any high fiber because even doctors recognize that if you have strictures, most of the time you should not do it. But there's still some stupid doctors that say, "Oh, you're having bowel problems? Just throw a lot of fiber in there," and all of a sudden the fiber causes a blockage. And I met so many people that the only thing that removed their blockage is they had to completely, even if they don't go carnivore, they completely removed all the fiber from their diet. Like they may
Yeah.
have been doing a little bit of white rice, but white rice doesn't cause a blockage like fiber does. It's different. It's
Yeah.
white rice is still a grain. It's still inflammatory. Maybe it's not as inflammatory as brown rice because brown rice has got all the phytic acid and lectins and all this other crap, but it still causes inflammation. This is like another thing. Like if I ever tried white rice, that's probably the only plant that I can tolerate that doesn't cause me so many problems. It's crazy, a white rice, but I notice I don't have gut problems when I eat white rice. You know what I have? I have joint pain. It's crazy. I I have 2 prior hip surgeries, so I notice that my hips start getting a little more cranky if I eat white rice. But my gut, it doesn't hurt. It's weird.
And your family joins you in the carnivore diet? And
Hell no.
because no, they don't.
No.
Oh,
No,
that's
my
interesting.
father
Tell me
loves
more.
even though my father disagrees with most of what I'm doing, he likes really fatty steaks. He always likes the tomahawk and all that, but he eats a lot of bread and all this other shit with it too. So, he's got that standard American diet. And one of my brothers is complete opposite me in every way you can imagine. So not only does he not like doing exercise, he's like, no, you're gonna be a meathead. Meathead can be used in a good sense here, but he's also a vegan. He's a liberal, and he's an atheist. And like those main things are like you could complete opposite because I'm a very far right wing Republican. I am very religious. I'm a carnivore, and he's a vegan, and and not just that he's a vice principal at a school, and where I speak out against like, hey, you got to teach these kids there's only 2 different genders. Hey, you may think that's a political comment, Patrick, but that's a biological comment right there, okay? There's only 2 genders. He's like, no, we're not allowed to teach kids that. I'm like, what the? You're teaching kids there's 73 genders. What are you doing? And so it drives me crazy. I still love him as a brother though, but just like he's complete opposite. So in other words, yeah, my family definitely doesn't, they don't even do keto. Because they think they need like, bread and carbs and like grains and shit. That even though they see that I'm doing the best out of the family, not only just like health wise, but career wise, too. They're like, no, he's just Chris is just really weird. He eats nothing. And not just that, we see him eat a lot of raw meat. Cause like what I'll do at a family gathering, if they have like, a filet mignon, that's my favorite cut of steak, Patrick. You know
Well,
why?
that's not bad.
Yeah. Well, it's usually the most expensive. That's the bad part.
Yeah, it's super tender.
Yeah, it's the most tender cut of the steak. So you don't even have to grind that up. You can basically cut it up and you basically masticate it in your mouth. And this is what I'm not married. I have no kids, but I occasionally date. And if I ever go on a date, I get a filet mignon, but I get it as rare as possible. Sometimes with the dates, it freaks them out. Sounds crazy. I've never dated a carnivore. I've been a carnivore since 2018. I've never dated one, even because I got really into the carnivore community, like come back to the United States, but really in the last couple of years, because I started going more and more conventions. I've been helping out the carnivore community since 2018. Though. All these carnivore doctors, I was helping them like 3 or 4 years ago. But no, I never dated a carnivore. It's actually for a reason. When I have to do all these different functions and events, I was like, if something goes bad and within a relationship, and if I see them in a future event, it's gonna be very awkward. I'd rather just date someone that I probably like within my local area, and maybe like it's kind of crazy. I've actually a lot of my ex-girlfriends are actually doctors, and I was like, wait, you just got screwed by doctors. You're dating? I was like, yeah, I'm turning the tables around. Um, but no, that's one of the reasons and now I'm thinking about. I was like, I should probably find a girl that actually eats similar to me because a lot of just thought I was really weird, especially at a date, and you're like, oh, I like a filet mignon, but I want it as rare as possible. I almost want it raw. I want you to barely cook it, and I want it to be really bloody on the inside of that steak. You see the other date, you're like, but yeah, I was like, hey, I'm I'm actually relatively very lean and healthy for a 40-year-old attorney, so I think I know what I'm
Well,
doing.
it makes for a great conversation, though.
Oh yeah, that's like the funniest thing about like dating a non-carnivore. They see you eating all these crazy raw meats, and you're like, oh, let me tell you the benefits of this. Like, oh, this is why I eat a lot of fat raw. I don't eat it cooked because too much rendered fat goes right through you. You can actually
Yeah.
absorb more fat if it's raw.
Yeah. So in your position, as you say, you travel a lot. You got two law companies in two
Yeah.
different states. You travel a lot. You're campaigning. You're always on the road. How do you deal with your diet when you're always on the road? Because this is one of the biggest questions that people have. Like, what do you do when you travel?
Distance, you would fast during the traveling. And then when you go to a big functional dinner or having a dinner with someone else, a group of people, that is where you feast, but you feast on only meat. That's like the best thing I've learned is I'll do a 24 to 48-hour fast while traveling because I usually travel a couple days at a time. But at the end, especially if it's like for a meetup, I'll save it for doing like all you can eat Brazilian steakhouse. Because you can actually eat more meat if you can fast right before if you do it slowly. If you do a fast of like, especially when it's like like 48 to 72 hours, you don't want to eat too much meat really fast. You slowly eat it for the course of like 1 or 2 hours slowly. And that's where you can eat a lot more meat. And this is where I learned I could do like 3 to 5 pounds of meat sometimes if I did like a 48 to 72-hour fast because I slowly ate it for like 2 to 3 hours. But yeah, but I feel amazing. I'm still a relatively small guy at like 45 pounds and very lean. And my body fat's still actually in the single digits. But no, I learned that I can get away with eating a couple, like 3 to 5 pounds of steak if I do a proper fast and refeed.
Yeah.
But I've met a lot of
Amazing.
other people. I've met a lot of females that can do that too. So
You met a lot of what?
females that can do the same thing. Female carnivores. Yeah.
Okay.
You see there, you're looking like a small, like a very thin girl carnivore. All of a sudden, you see her like eating like 3 to 5 pounds of meat. I'm like, that's where I know I should probably start dating a carnivore girl. I'm like, That is like the most attractive thing I've ever seen. Like just, most people are like, oh, it's about the size of her breast. Like she's got double D's and all that, slim waist, nice legs, all that. That is that's how I was like, that's the biggest turn on. I'm like, no, the biggest turn on is watching a girl eat like a lot of steak. And if she's eating the steak raw, it's even better. Yeah.
Where are you
So
going to find these?
well, after the campaign, I don't want to date during the campaign. It's too many. I
Oh.
already tried dating some problems during the campaign. It was just a mess. I'm like, I don't need to deal with this shit. So, let me finish the campaign, and I'll take it from there.
And then as because I remember when I saw you first time on Instagram, you were the carnivore lawyer, and you posted some really good stuff there. Did that mean that you were
Yeah, well,
like a lawyer in the carnivore scene, or did you call
well, no,
yourself?
this is what I actually do because I actually like I'm the mold attorney for a lot of the carnivores or just people in general. But a lot of carnivores they don't realize if they ever get sick from mold, it doesn't matter if you're eating a pure zero carb carnivore based diet. If you're getting sick from mold, you have to treat the mold. Otherwise, you're gonna keep getting sick. Even just eating, you're gonna have to eat nothing but meat because if you have any carbohydrates when you have mold, it makes it 10 times worse. But this is where I tell them what to do for not really treatment wise, but what to do with your legal rights, how to make a claim from that, or what I'm doing for Dr. Kiltz. I'm the general counsel for the Kiltz Mighty Tribe. So I give seminars on becoming a health coach and how to do it legally because you have to use all these disclaimers. You have to use medical disclaimers to make sure that you're not basically giving the implication to the American public that you are practicing medicine. Because a lot of people will think that if you're a health coach, that you're actually like a blended quasi doctor. But you have to make these disclaimers. And what I also do is I tell them how to protect their liability by forming corporations, forming LLCs, how to save yourself on taxes. I mean, these are things actually carnivores should know because, like, you got a huge portion of the carnivore community becoming health coaches now, which I think is awesome because people, and we always tell them, like, you have to give a disclaimer. Please consult with your primary care of a doctor for any kind of medical advice. I'm not,
Yep.
this cannot be construed as medical advice. But this is going to be construed as health advice. I'm not prescribing anything for you. I'm just telling you what has kind of some things you may want to consider and investigate because a lot of people are healing from this. Yeah. And like, for example, you talk about histamines. Like, okay, if you're having histamines, this is going to be your option. You're going to get the freshest and cleanest cuts of steak. You're not going to eat any eggs and dairy. You're not going to eat any fish. If you do eat fish, you got to make sure it's like frozen immediately. And there's a couple of farms, by the way, Patrick, in the United States that actually has a very low histamine fish and meats. So what they'll do is like, hey, instead of buying all your meat from certain farms or grocery stores, you buy from these farms, and they have a huge selection of low histamine meats and fish that you could buy from. And if you eat those meats and fish, you will have less of a reaction. You'll feel actually perfect. So this is why I'm telling people, like, consider health coaches because sometimes the doctor is not going to know that you're going to go to that certain farms are going to sell like low histamine meats. A health coach would though. This is where the health coaches come into play. Yeah.
Yeah. Amazing.
Yeah.
Is there anything you think that we haven't touched on that feels important for you to say on this
Well,
show?
The only thing I'm not going to cover is a lot of the political side, but there is one announcement I'm going to make. I'm waiting to finalize it. So, of Bobby Kennedy, RFK Jr., right? Everybody knows.
Surely.
So, I have an opportunity where I can work directly with him. And this is going to be part of my announcement because they found out that I'm the only, because there's other attorneys running for Congress, it's common. Actually, more than half of the presidents in the United States, Patrick, have been attorneys. 28 out of the 47. So all of them have a background in law. I was the one that got my PhD in public policy because I wanted to have a better diverse background. But a lot of the heads of my Republican Party acknowledge, like, you're the one candidate that's like really focused on health and wellness. We don't have many candidates like you, and you're very diverse. it's very rare for an attorney to be basically promoting health and wellness for the entire country. You're one of the we have never had a candidate like you, but we want to give you an opportunity because RFK Jr. is expanding something to do in every one of the, I'm running for Congress in the state of Nevada, which is Las Vegas. How would you like to be kind of running the MAHA committee for the Nevada? You be in charge of health. And instead of doing something at a congressional level, we want you working with the state, because this is part of my announcement, is that you could do more for health at a state level than a congressional level, because at a congressional or federal level, federal government, this changes country by country, because I was just speaking with, who is it? Ricky Duplessis. He's in the UK. I just did a podcast with him. And he says that it's mainly the national government that controls everything. They control health, they control that. In the United States, health is really controlled by the states, not the federal government. So if you work mainly for the federal government with the states, you could do more for health. That's probably the only thing we probably haven't elaborated. But part of my next announcement is I'm going to be in charge of health for a big part of the state of Nevada.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. What are your plans?
Exactly.
Can you tell me? Can you tell us something?
I'll tell you exactly what I did is what I plan to do. This is what I told some of these big schools when I was going to get my master's in dietetics. I plan on flipping the food pyramid upside down to be applied not only to hospitals, but to schools. I want to change all of the school lunch programs, because you see what these kids are eating nowadays. It's horrible. I mean, they're eating they're actually eliminating meat from a lot of the public schools around the country. They started off by having what's called meatless Mondays, but now they're having meatless Fridays too. So they're having like 2 out of the 5, school days out of the week that they're recommending that kids do not eat any meat. And these kids, as you probably witness, not just in the United States, but worldwide, are having so many health problems. You got obesity is its highest it's ever been in the United States. It's at 20%. It used to be like at 12, 13 for many years. It got up to 20%. And this is obese, not just fat and overweight, obese, which is clinically dangerous. Like you're so fat, it is dangerous. That is what most of 1 out of every 5 kids in the United States is dangerously fat.
You mean 20% of the kids are obese, not just the population, it's the kids.
Yeah, just the kids, yeah.
Wow.
I think the general population, it's it's a little higher, but kids do, as you may know, it's easy thing to recognize, is that usually a lot of kids can get away with a lot more food. You probably remember it, Patrick. You could eat whatever you want and like so much sugar, and you never really get that fat, right? It's only the kids that get fed huge amounts of sugar that they may get fat. But as we get older, we realize that we have to go keto or we have to go carnivore, because we can't get away with that when we get older. For men, it's usually after the age of 27, 28. Females, it's like the age of 21, 22. This is where they get their freshman 5 or whatever they call it in college. And they're after their first couple of years of college, girls get really fat. For guys, what I observed, it's usually in their late 20s, but just an example, you can't get away with. That's why the obesity for the general population for adults is usually higher than kids, but kids have always been the skinnier little young kids running around, right? They're more active and they can eat whatever they're called. But nowadays, it's at 20%. It's the highest it's ever been. And that's concerning. So, and not just that, when you think about it, Patrick, not just the United States, but everywhere else, kids are the most important thing to focus on, because those kids are our future leaders. If we want to have a future not only in the United States but worldwide, we got to take care of the kids. So a lot of people are forgetting about this. So so my focus is to be changing a lot of the lunch programs and the dietary guidelines for the schools.
It's going to be such a beautiful example for all the other states as well, if you manage to
And
do
other
that.
states will follow. And as I had podcasts with people from so many different countries, and we're all following what's happening in different countries and whether we should follow. What's happening in Germany right now, what's happening in France, what's happening with Italy, because Italy was one of the few countries that started banning lab-grown meat. how are they doing? And if it's working, we should do it too. That's how it's going to happen in the United States. And this is how it's going to happen throughout the world too. They're going to say, oh God, the United States increased its red meat intake and they reduced their carbohydrates and high fructose corn syrup, all this other stuff, and their chronic diseases went down. Maybe we should increase our red meat consumption. Maybe this is where we have to wake people up at a worldwide level, global level.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Chris, before we wrap up, if someone wants to get to know you better, they want to learn more about you, where can they find you? Where can they contact you?
Just please be advised, I have a lot of offensive humor because I have some people looking me up for, God, I've got a lot of videos and you use some swear words, but I think I'm pretty. Anyways, I used to be just on LinkedIn. I think I made this about, are you familiar with LinkedIn?
Surely.
So it's a professional networking. I was only on that for like 14 years. And I was on Facebook, but I used like a different last name on Facebook for a lot of years when the Carnivore groups. But when I ran the campaign, when I started in like January early this year, I jumped on like every platform. So now I'm on Instagram, X, Facebook, YouTube. I got a YouTube channel, but my main two websites, the campaign site is chrisbrandlin.com. And for the legal site, because I still do pro bono free legal help for a lot of the carnivore community, you go to brandlinlaw.com. And my emails are on those websites, so you should always contact me.
Amazing. I will make sure that they're in the show notes as well. Beautiful.
Perfect.
Well, Chris, thank you so much for sharing your story
Not a problem.
here on this podcast.
Yeah.
And I just want to say to anyone who's watching this and you watched till the end, if anything of this conversation with Chris resonated with you, I invite you to sit with it because, in my opinion, oftentimes change simply starts by recognizing something within yourself when you hear someone else's story. And I'm sure there's somebody out there who hears your story and feels very connected to that.
And even, even if there's a disagreement, I think the best thing to have is to have a civil discourse with someone one-on-one. And this is why I kind of promoted Charlie Kirk, because that's what he promoted. Like, hey, let's put down the violence. Violence starts when words stop. Okay, let's talk about the problems. Give me your point of view. Let me give you my point of view. And let's see how we differ. And let's see what we can agree upon.
Wouldn't that be a beautiful world?
Everybody should do that.
Let's work towards it.
Yes.
Thank you very much, Chris, for being on the show. It was a pleasure.
Likewise. Thank you for having me on.
Thank you for watching the Patrick Alexander podcast.